This story is titled, Daughter-in-Law Blocked Me from My Grandkids. So I cut her financially, and now she can't keep up with the bills. Hi everyone. I don't know where else to turn, so I'm posting here to vent. I'm a 60-year-old grandma who's found herself in a huge mess with my daughter-in-law, Sarah. My son, Jake, has been married to Sarah for 9 years. They've got 2 little boys, Ethan, 7, and Liam, 5, who mean the absolute world to me. The thing is, things have gotten so bad between Sarah and me lately that I feel like I'm losing them. Let me back up and explain. Jake and Sarah were doing okay for themselves at first. Jake had a steady job, and Sarah was a stay-at-home mom. I understood her choice to stay home since the boys were so young, but honestly, I always wondered if it was a long-term plan. She'd talk about going back to work once Liam was older, but that just never seemed to happen. Then COVID hit, and everything changed. Jake lost his job. They'd just bought a house, too, one I helped them with. When they found their dream home, they didn't quite have enough for the down payment, so I stepped in. It was a gift, no strings attached. They were young, starting out, and I wanted to help. But when the pandemic came, things got really tough for them. Without Jake's income, they were struggling to pay the mortgage, school fees for Ethan's private preschool, and just basic bills. I didn't even think twice. I started covering what I could. It wasn't just the big stuff, like the mortgage. I paid for smaller things too, like groceries, clothes for the kids, and even little luxuries like takeout when I knew they were stressed. I thought I was doing the right thing. I love my son, and I adore my grandkids. I wanted them to have a stable life, even during tough times. I've worked hard my whole life. My husband and I ran a small farming business for decades. After he passed away 6 years ago, I took over running the farm. It's not some big operation, but it's enough to provide me with a comfortable life. I figured, why not share that comfort with my family? Here's the thing. I never expected anything in return. I've never brought up the money I've spent or held it over their heads. It made me happy to help, and I loved seeing the boys enjoy the opportunities my contributions gave them. Whether that was private school, a family vacation, or just a new set of Legos. But despite everything I've done, Sarah has always kept me at arm's length. I don't know why. We've never had a screaming match or a huge fight, but she's always been distant. It's like she tolerates me but doesn't actually like me. I chalked it up to personality differences. Maybe we just didn't click, and that was fine as long as the boys were happy. Recently, though, things have gotten so much worse. Sarah has been pulling back. It started with little things, canceling family visits or making excuses about why the boys couldn't come over. They used to visit me at least once a month. Ethan and Liam loved coming to the farm. They'd run around with the animals, play outside, and just be kids. But over the past few months, the visits have stopped altogether. At first, Sarah had reasons. The boys have a school project, or they've got swimming practice, or they're just too tired. I believed her at first, but the excuses started feeling less and less convincing. I missed the boys so much that I offered to come visit them instead. Sarah shut that down too. The house is messy, or we're going to visit my parents, or we need a quiet weekend. It felt like every door I tried to open was being slammed shut. I tried to tell myself that maybe I was overreacting. Life gets busy, right? But then I started noticing a pattern. Every time I reached out to see the boys, Sarah would find a way to say no. At this point, it's been months since I've seen my grandkids, and I can't shake the feeling that this isn't just about busy schedules. I've brought this up with Jake, but he always brushes it off. He says things like, "Mom, Sarah's just stressed," or "It's not personal, she's just busy." But it feels personal. How could it not? This has been eating at me. I don't want to overstep, and I've tried to respect Sarah's space, but I feel like I'm being quietly pushed out of my own family. I don't understand what I've done to deserve this. Have any of you been in a situation like this? Am I overthinking things? I don't want to make a big deal out of nothing, but it's hard not to feel hurt. Ethan and Liam are such a huge part of my life, and the idea of losing them is unbearable. I just needed to get this off my chest. Any advice or perspective would be appreciated. Thanks for reading. Update 1 point. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update because things have gone from confusing to outright heartbreaking. I can't believe I'm even writing this, but here goes. Last week, I got a call from Ethan, my 7-year-old grandson. He called me on my phone, which was a surprise in itself because usually when I talk to the boys, it's through Jake or Sarah. Ethan sounded a little nervous, but he said he missed me and wanted to come over to the farm. My heart soared hearing his little voice, but when I asked him if his parents knew he was calling, he went quiet. After a pause, he mumbled, "Not really," and then hung up. That call broke me. The boys shouldn't feel like they have to sneak around to talk to me. I could hear it in Ethan's voice. He misses me as much as I miss him. I sat there holding the phone, wondering what to do. I didn't want to make things worse by overstepping, so I decided to text Jake and Sarah. I just wanted to clear the air. I sent them a simple message. Period. Hey, I got a call from Ethan today. He said he misses me and wants to visit the farm. I wanted to check with you both. Is everything okay? Is there a reason he felt he couldn't talk to me openly? I miss the boys and want to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong. No response. The next day, I woke up to a long, angry email from Sarah. She accused me of manipulating Ethan and interfering with her parenting. She said I was undermining her and making things harder for their family. She even said I was spoiling the boys and that I was a bad influence. I was devastated. I've only ever tried to support them. I've never gone against Sarah's wishes, and I've always asked permission before doing anything with the boys. For her to twist things around like this felt cruel. After crying my eyes out, I called Jake. I needed to hear from him what was really going on. At first, he tried to play peacemaker, like he always does. Mom, it's not that serious, he said. Sarah's just stressed, and she feels like you're overstepping a little. Overstepping how? I asked. I've only ever done what you've asked me to do, whether that's helping financially or spending time with the boys. If there's a problem, why didn't you or Sarah just tell me? Jake hesitated. Then after a long pause, he finally admitted it. Sarah feels like the boys like you more than her. She's jealous, Mom. That's why she's been pulling back. I was stunned. Jealous? What? I told Jake that I've never tried to compete with Sarah. I'm their grandma, not their mom. My role in their lives is completely different. Why didn't Sarah just talk to me about this? I asked. She thought it would be easier this way, Jake said. She thinks the boys need to spend more time with us as a family and less time at the farm. Easier? Who? Certainly not for me, or Ethan and Liam for that matter. I told Jake I didn't think this was fair. Do you really think it's healthy to cut your kids off from their grandma because of some misplaced insecurity? Jake just shrugged. It's not permanent, Mom. Sarah just needs time to feel comfortable again. Please be patient. I was trying to process all of this when, later that night, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I almost didn't answer, but I was hoping maybe she wanted to clear the air. Big mistake. Sarah was livid. She accused me of trying to manipulate Jake against her. She said I'd crossed a line by even bringing this up with him. Then she dropped the bombshell. You're banned from my children's lives forever. I was speechless. She was screaming so loudly I could barely get a word in. Before I could even try to defend myself, she hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her words in my head. Banned forever. How could she do this? How could Jake let this happen? I'd always done my best to be supportive and respectful. I never expected to be treated like this. The next day, Jake called me. He apologized for Sarah's behavior, but didn't do much else. When I asked him if he was okay with his kids being cut off from their grandma, he said, Mom, what can I do? She has the final say when it comes to the boys. That was the moment I realized Jake wasn't going to stand up for me, or himself for that matter. He's so afraid of rocking the boat with Sarah that he's willing to go along with whatever she says, even if it means hurting his kids and me. And here's the thing. Sarah's insecurity seems to stem from something as small as a trip I took the boys on 3 months ago. I took them to Disneyland, a trip they'd been begging for. I cleared it with Jake and Sarah first, and they both said it was fine. The boys had the time of their lives, and when we got back, they wouldn't stop talking about it. Apparently, that trip was what set Sarah off. She thought the boys were too excited about their time with me and not excited enough to come home. She saw that as some sort of competition. That's not what this is about. If I was trying to steal her kids' affection, but they're not mine to take. They're Sarah and Jake's children, and I've never tried to step into their shoes as parents. But Sarah doesn't see it that way. She's convinced I'm a threat, and now she's punishing me and the boys for it. I don't know what to do. I miss Ethan and Liam so much it hurts. I've tried to talk to Jake, but he's useless. He says I just need to wait it out. But how long is too long? Have any of you been in a situation like this? How do you deal with being cut off from your grandkids because of a daughter-in-law who's insecure and controlling? I'm at a loss here. Any advice would be appreciated. All right, everyone. Before we dive into the update, I have a small request. We put a lot of effort into finding these incredible stories for you every single day, and your support means the world to us. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us grow and allows us to continue bringing you more amazing stories. Thank you. Now let's move to the update. Update 2.0. Hey everyone. Thanks to those who commented and shared advice on my last post, I honestly didn't think I'd be back here so soon, but things have escalated in ways I couldn't have imagined. After Sarah's late-night meltdown and her declaration that I'm banned from the boys' lives, I spent a lot of time reflecting. I kept going over every interaction I've had with her, searching for anything that might have justified this kind of behavior. Honestly, I came up empty. Sure, we've had some disagreements over the years, but nothing that seemed big enough to cause this. I decided I needed to set some boundaries of my own. For years, I've been financially supporting Jake and Sarah. I never kept a tally, but I know it's a significant amount. Mortgage payments, school fees, vacations, groceries. You name it, I've covered it. And I never minded because I thought I was helping my family. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being taken for granted. Worse, I felt used. So the next time Jake came over to collect the monthly check I'd been giving them, I sat him down. "I need to talk to you," I said. He looked nervous immediately, probably sensing the seriousness in my tone. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened recently," I continued. "And I've decided I can't keep supporting you financially, while Sarah continues to treat me like an enemy. If I'm not allowed to see my grandkids, I'm not paying your bills." Jake's reaction floored me. Instead of understanding where I was coming from, he got defensive. "Mom, you can't just cut us off like that," he said. "The boys need their school fees paid. We're barely making it as it is." I told him that this wasn't a decision I made lightly. I reminded him of all the times I'd stepped in to help them out, even when I didn't have to. "I helped because I love you and the boys," I said. "But love isn't a one-way street, Jake. I can't keep pouring my time, money, and energy into a relationship where I'm not even respected, let alone welcomed." He tried to argue, saying it wasn't fair to the kids to punish them for Sarah's behavior. That stung because the last thing I want is for Ethan and Liam to suffer. But I also knew that continuing to enable this dynamic wouldn't help anyone in the long run. I asked him, "Do you think it's fair for Sarah to ban me from seeing the boys? To treat me like I'm the problem when all I've done is support your family? If you think that's fair, then maybe you don't need my help after all." Jake didn't have an answer for that. He just sat there staring at the floor, looking defeated. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, he tried a different angle. "What if Sarah apologizes?" he asked. "Would you change your mind then?" I almost laughed. "Jake, do you really think Sarah's going to apologize? If she wanted to make things right, she would have done it by now. She's not sorry. She's doubling down on her behavior." He kept pushing, saying he was stuck in the middle and didn't know how to fix things. I told him the truth. "Jake, you're not stuck. You're choosing not to stand up to her. That's not the same thing." By the end of the conversation, Jake left empty-handed and upset. I felt awful, but also relieved. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. A few days later, I heard through a family friend that Sarah had been complaining about me to anyone who would listen. She told people that I'd cut them off financially to control them, and that I was trying to punish her for setting boundaries. It hurt to hear her twist the story like that, but I decided not to engage. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. I joined a local volunteer group and started spending more time with friends. I even began taking yoga classes, which is something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. It felt good to have something positive to focus on, even if the pain of missing my grandkids was still there. Then, a week later, I got another call from Jake. This time, he wasn't asking for money. He just wanted to talk. He admitted that things weren't going well at home. He was stressed, overworked, and exhausted from trying to manage everything on his own. "Sarah still isn't working?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "No," he said. "She keeps saying she's going to, but nothing ever happens. And she's spending more than ever. I don't know how much longer I can do this." I felt for him, I really did. But at the same time, I knew this was a problem of his own making. "Jake," I said, "you need to take a hard look at your life. If Sarah isn't willing to contribute or compromise, you're going to have to decide what's more important, keeping the peace or keeping your sanity." He didn't say much after that. I could tell he was processing everything, but I didn't want to push him. It's his life, and he has to make his own choices. As for me, I'm done playing the role of the ATM grandma. I miss Ethan and Liam more than I can put into words, but I also know that I deserve respect and boundaries. If Sarah can't see that, then that's her loss, not mine. Thanks for reading. I'll update if anything changes, but for now, I'm focusing on myself and the things I can control. To anyone else out there dealing with toxic family dynamics, just know you're not alone. Stay strong. Update 3. Hi everyone. I didn't expect to be back with another update so soon, but a lot has happened. and I need to get it off my chest. After I stood my ground and cut off financial support, I thought things might settle down. Maybe Jake and Sarah would figure things out on their own. Or maybe, just maybe, Sarah would realize how unfair she's been. But instead, things have taken an even uglier turn. It's been about 4 months since I stopped paying their bills. In that time, I've tried to focus on myself. I joined a local gardening club, started volunteering at a food pantry, and even picked up an old hobby, painting. For the first time in years, I'm doing things just for me. But no matter how busy I keep myself, I can't stop thinking about Ethan and Liam. I wonder how they're doing, if they're happy, if they miss me like I miss them. Last week, I got a frantic call from a close friend who owns a salon. She told me Sarah had been in with a group of her friends, and apparently, my name came up. My friend overheard Sarah bragging about how she had put me in my place by cutting me off from the boys. She mocked me for being old-fashioned and called me controlling. She even said I was using my money to buy the boys' love. Hearing that made my blood boil. I've spent years supporting Jake and Sarah out of love, not obligation. I've never tried to control them or the boys. If anything, I've bent over backward to stay out of their way. And yet, Sarah was out there painting me as some sort of manipulative villain. It felt like a slap in the face. I debated confronting Jake about it, but decided against it. What's the point? He's shown time and time again that he won't stand up to her. Instead, I tried to let it go and focus on my own peace of mind. Then, a few days ago, Jake showed up at my house unannounced. I hadn't seen him since the last time we talked about cutting off the financial support, so I was surprised to see him. He looked tired. More than tired, really. He looked defeated. We sat down in the kitchen, and he started telling me how bad things had gotten. Without my help, they've had to move Ethan and Liam to a public school. Jake's working 2 jobs, and he's still struggling to keep up with their bills. Meanwhile, Sarah hasn't changed a thing. She's still not working, still spending money on unnecessary things like expensive skincare products and boutique clothes. Jake said he's tried to talk to her about cutting back, but she brushes him off or gets defensive. He asked me if I'd consider helping again, just for the boys' sake. "Mom, they're the ones suffering in all of this," he said. "They didn't ask for any of this. Please, just help us get through this rough patch." I looked at him and said, "Jake, do you really think this is just a rough patch? This is your life now. You've been enabling Sarah's behavior for years, and now it's caught up to you." He didn't like hearing that, but it's the truth. I told him I wasn't going to bail them out. If Sarah wants to make these decisions for their family, then she needs to take responsibility for the consequences. I even reminded him of the time he said Sarah would apologize. "How's that going?" I asked. He didn't answer. The next day, I got an email from Sarah. This time, she wasn't angry. She was pleading. She asked if I could help pay for the boys' extracurricular activities, saying they'd had to pull Ethan out of his swim team because they couldn't afford the fees. She wrote, "Please don't make the boys suffer because of your issues with me." That line stopped me in my tracks. The audacity of it. She's the one who cut me out of their lives. She's the one who banned me from seeing the boys. And now she's asking for my help? Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement of the hurt she's caused. Just another demand for money. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There's nothing left to say to her. I've given so much to this family, and it's never been enough for Sarah. If she wants my help, she needs to own up to what she's done and make things right. Until then, I'm done. A part of me feels guilty, mostly for the boys. I hate the idea of them missing out on things they love because of this mess. But I also know that giving in would only reinforce the cycle. Sarah would keep taking, keep controlling, and I'd keep getting hurt. I'm trying to stay strong, but it's not easy. Every time I see a photo of Ethan and Liam or hear their little voices in my head, my resolve wavers. I miss them so much it hurts. But I remind myself that I deserve respect. I deserve to be treated with kindness, not used as a financial safety net while being shut out of their lives. If you've read this far, thank you. It helps to know I'm not alone. To anyone out there dealing with a toxic family dynamic, stay strong. It's hard, but sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to find peace. I'll update again if there's any change, but for now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life and hoping that one day, when the boys are older, they'll understand the truth. Update 4. Hi again, everyone. It's been about 6 months since I last wrote, and I wanted to share what's happened since. Things have shifted in ways I never thought possible. Not necessarily for the better, but I've made peace with it. After cutting them off financially, I assumed there would be silence from Jake and Sarah for a while. I thought they'd take some time to adjust to their new reality and figure things out. But instead, Jake showed up again about 2 weeks ago, looking more worn out than ever. He didn't have the energy to argue this time. He just told me outright, they're drowning in debt. Apparently, they'd been using credit cards to make up for the loss of my financial help. Sarah hasn't changed her spending habits. She's still buying luxury items, like designer clothes and expensive skincare products, while Jake is working himself to the bone at 2 jobs. He admitted they'd defaulted on several payments, and now the bank was calling constantly. I listened quietly as he explained everything. He said he came to me not because he wanted money for himself, but because the kids were being affected. He mentioned that Ethan and Liam had to transfer schools, and they've been struggling to adjust. He also told me Sarah is now pressuring him to convince me to pay off their credit card debt, to reset everything. When he finished, he looked at me with such desperation, it almost broke me. Almost. Jake, I said, I understand that you're in a tough spot, but how many times have we had this conversation? How many times have I stepped in to save you, only to end up right back here? He didn't answer. I went on. I've told you before, I'm not helping until Sarah takes responsibility. That starts with an apology, not just to me, but to you too. She's putting this burden on your shoulders while refusing to make any changes herself. That's not fair to you or the kids. Jake nodded but didn't say much. I could tell he was holding back. After he left, I thought that might be the end of it. But a few days later, I received another email from Sarah. This one was different from the others. It wasn't angry or demanding. It was desperate. She wrote about how hard things have been since I stopped helping and how much the boys missed their extracurricular activities. She even mentioned that they'd had to cancel Liam's birthday party because they couldn't afford it. Her email ended with this line, I know we've had our differences, but I hope you can see past that for the boys' sake. There it was again. No apology, no acknowledgement of her role in any of this. Just another attempt to guilt me into giving her what she wanted. I didn't respond. I've learned that engaging with her doesn't lead anywhere productive. Instead, I forwarded the email to Jake with a simple note. She's reaching out to me now. Maybe it's time you both sit down and figure out a real plan instead of asking me to fix everything. Jake didn't reply, which honestly didn't surprise me. In the meantime, I've been focusing on myself. I've joined a few new groups in the community, including a book club and a crafting circle. I've even started mentoring kids at a local after-school program. It's been a wonderful way to channel my energy and meet people who share my values. But as much as I've tried to move forward, there are moments when the pain creeps back in. I miss Ethan and Liam every single day. I wonder if they think I've abandoned them, or if Sarah has told them things that aren't true. The thought of them growing up without knowing how much I love them is devastating. Recently, I had a heart-to-heart with a friend who's been through something similar. She told me something that stuck with me. You can't change other people, but you can control how much power you give them over your life. That's what I'm holding on to now. I can't make Sarah see reason, and I can't force Jake to stand up for himself. But I can choose to protect my own well-being and invest my time and resources in people who appreciate me. I've started making a list of things I want to do in the next year. Things I've put off for too long because I was so wrapped up in helping Jake and Sarah. One of the first things on the list is to take a trip. I haven't traveled since my husband passed, and I think it's time to change that. I've also started setting up a small scholarship fund in my husband's name. It's something I've been meaning to do for years, and now feels like the right time. Helping kids who genuinely need it feels like a much better use of my resources than funding Sarah's lifestyle. As for Jake, I hope he finds the strength to take control of his life. I told him the last time we spoke that my door is always open for him and the boys, but only if he's willing to have an honest conversation about what's going on. Until then, I have to take a step back. To anyone who's made it this far, thank you for listening. This journey hasn't been easy, but sharing it here has helped more than I can say. If you're dealing with a similar situation, I hope my story reminds you that you're not alone. Family dynamics can be complicated and painful, but it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm learning to find peace in the present. For now, that's enough.